Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Inside and Out with Patricia Stark. I am Patricia Stark, and joining me is Lynn Cimetti, who is my right-hand man, or I should say my right-hand woman. Lynn helps me in my company where we do training for public speaking and media training. Lynn, good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
I'm very fortunate to have Lynn in my company with me. She has a wonderful background working for ABC and Gannett over the years, and she's even worked with Barbara Walters many times, right, Lynn?
I certainly have, which was very exciting, you can imagine.
So this show is about finding ways to communicate with confidence. One of the reasons that I wanted to do this show is to bring it to more people that we don't necessarily get a chance to reach through our training programs and our classes. What we do is we do presentation training for corporate executives, for anyone in business who really wants to put their best foot forward and give a better presentation, whether it is a public speaking event or dealing with people over the phone or promoting their business. And then we also have a media training end of our company where we work with a lot of television hosts, people who want to work on television, a lot of guest experts who may be authors or business owners or people that are anything from someone who is a fitness expert to a fashion expert to you name it, and they have to go on the air, which is sometimes a necessary evil, but they have to do it to promote their expertise or their business, and we'll work with them ahead of time to put them through mock situations where I'll interview them and they can kind of find their comfort zone being in front of the camera when necessarily that's not their comfort zone to begin with, right, Lynn?
That's really the main part about it, is making somebody feel comfortable in a place that most of us feel extremely uncomfortable.
Exactly. And many times what I'll tell people when they're dealing with public speaking or going in front of the camera is that basically what you really end up having to do is simply get comfortable being and feeling uncomfortable. I think about it as growing pains. They're really never very pleasant. But when you're putting yourself out there and you're trying something for the first time, or maybe you're going in front of an audience and you're putting yourself in the spotlight, it can be nerve-wracking. But just like anything else, eventually you will get desensitized to it. The more that you put it out there and the more that you allow yourself to experience those growing pains, you can find your rhythm. Recently, we've been working with a lot of different networks with the opportunity to go down to Discovery Communications down in Maryland and help them with some of their on-air stuff. Oprah Winfrey Network, Martha Stewart, the Fuse Network, BET, we just did a bunch of things with them. And then we also work with a lot of PR firms that help businesses, again, put their best foot forward. So I want to give you an idea of what we'll be talking about over the next series of programs. We're going to be talking about confidence in general, confidence daily, just in your daily communication skills. You know, communication is the single most important thing that we can focus on as adults. That's a quote from Stephen Covey, who is the author of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I really think that communication skills is something that we don't necessarily teach in school. I mean, I know that when I work with people that are coming out of college or trying to find a job for the first time, especially now with technology and things that are changing. I'm an adjunct professor at St. Thomas Aquinas College for Communications and Broadcasting, and the students are texting, they're doing email, Facebook, all these different things, and yet they're not focusing on things like eye contact, talking with people, building relationships, being able to know what's my face saying that might not be matching the words that I'm telling people. And this is something that Lynn and I notice all the time when we're putting people on camera for the first time, is that they don't realize that their body language, their facial expression, the way that they're using their voice may be sending a completely different message than the words that are coming out of their mouth. So we're going to talk a little bit about how those things are going to be affecting the way that people see you and the way that you portray yourself out in the world. We'll talk about different confidence tools. I have a couple of voice experts and vocal coaches that are going to call into the show over the next few weeks, where we're going to be able to give you skills to make your voice sound more dynamic, to sound more confident if you have to deal with that confrontational phone call, or what should your outgoing message on your cell phone sound sound like? Or what should it sound like when you leave a message or someone calls and that's their first impression? Recently, I had worked with a gentleman who was starting his own business, and he had been out of work for a long time, and this was someone that I knew through the production industry. And I said, you should just start your own business. You know what you're doing. This is what you've done for other people. So he took the plunge, and lo and behold, he launches this, and I call him on the phone one day, and I get his recording, and it just sounded like, hello, leave me a message and I'll call you back. I left a message, and I was like, and I don't want to use his real name, so I'll call him John. I'll say, John, what are you doing? You sounded like you were dead on your outgoing message, and this is the first impression of someone that's going to call you and want to have you represent them for their business. I was like, you got to change that message now. And it was so funny. The next time I called him back, he was like, hi, this is John, and give me a call. Make it a great day. It was like a totally different person. But that's the impression that people are going to have before even meeting us. Now, 85% of our success really comes from how we interact with others. And the interesting thing is that only 7% of our communication impact is the actual words that we're using. And so many people get all caught up on I want to say the right thing, or how am I going to word this? What am I going to say? Where only 7% is the actual words, but 93% is everything else. And what is that? That is in our delivery, our vibe, our energy, our facial expression, our body language, how we say things. I mean, just think of the 3 words, I love you. And I'm going to give you an example of how different that they can sound. It can sound really nice if I say, I love you. Or it can sound very different if I say, I love you. Or, I love you. Like I could care less, right? So it really does change the way that we use our words.
It's what I have found is that because of all the technology and because of all the texting, etc., people do lose that whole sense of being able to express themselves verbally in a way that's truly communicating.
Well, think about it. When you receive a text or an email, sometimes you have to be like, well, wait, how'd they mean this? Because you can't get the meaning and that vibe and that energy from that. And many times that's when a lot of problems happen, when people are trying to deal with issues just through email. And my husband will always say this, and he's in sales. He'll say, pick up the phone. You've got to talk. You've got to have a human conversation, because so much can be taken the wrong way. And sometimes I feel like with email and with texting, yes, I use it. It makes my life easier. It makes me efficient. But sometimes I feel like it's going back to Morse code, where it's just like, okay, well, this is how we're going to communicate now. I thought that we've been graduated. I thought we've come on to a newer plane of better communication skills. Well, we have a lot to talk about today, but we have a phone number that I want to give you. That's our live call-in number, which is 845-362-0013. If you would like to call in and ask us any questions about communication skills, public speaking fears, how to deal with that inner critic that is really, our first and important communicator is what we say to ourselves. I think sometimes the most important thing that we will ever hear is what we say to ourselves. Because if you think about it, we speak to ourselves before we send out the communication. So whether we're thinking of it positively or negatively or dreading it, that's going to influence our outward communication. So that internal communication is extremely important. But I want to get into when we're in person, whether it is a public speaking event or even just raising your hand at the PTA or dealing with people on a daily basis. Our first communicator is our posture. Notice how you carry your body. Notice how you stand and how you use your space and how you own your space. And you'll notice when you're standing in line to get a cup of coffee or getting on mass transit or wherever you are, start noticing. I guarantee that the majority of people are doing blocking and hanging and slouching. And what I mean by that is most of the time we're crossing our arms, or we're crossing our waists. We're doing things that block us and make us not be accessible to other human beings. I mean, the way that police officers are taught to approach people is their hands straight down by their sides. This way, no one thinks they're hiding anything behind their back. They look accessible. They look confident. They don't look like they're blocking or protecting. They're just standing up straight with their arms down by their sides. And when I work with people for public speaking skills and they're going to be getting up in front of a stage, I'll tell them, I'll go practice this in your daily life. Start to notice when you're you're just standing on line somewhere, or you're waiting for the train, or wherever you are, start to notice your body language. Are your feet planted firmly in the ground? Are you standing up straight and tall? Or are you blocking and hanging and doing these other things? And body language also sends a message to people when we're talking to them. If your feet are pointed towards someone, we're engaged and we're listening. Are we, again, blocking, or are we open and accessible? Many times people will worry that maybe they're an over-talker or someone isn't really super involved or paying attention to what they're talking about. Well, look down and notice their feet. If their feet are pointing away from you, they're heading for the door, and you probably should wrap it up. There's all kind of different body language signs that we send to people. I mean, first of all, if you're speaking to someone and your hands are on your hip, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I knew I was in trouble if my hands were, my mom's hands were on her hip.
Sure.
Yeah, that's really kind of an accusatory stance, correct?
Absolutely.
So studies show that people sum us up in the first 7 seconds of when they meet us. And that really doesn't give us a whole heck of a lot of time. And most times we haven't even had a chance to open our mouth yet at that point. And if you think about it, we really are our own walking billboard. The way that we carry ourselves, the way that we have our posture, the clothes that we choose to wear, in whatever the situation may be, we're telling the world how we feel about ourselves and how we want to be treated. So it's the difference as if I was going into a business situation, I'm going to dress and carry myself differently. If I'm going out dancing with my husband, I'm sure not going to wear that outfit to the PTA meeting the next day at school. So we have to be aware of, yes, that whole saying of don't judge a book by its cover. Unfortunately, we do that. We do that when we meet people for the first time and we see how they're carrying themselves and the wardrobe that they choose. When I do public speaking events and I talk about this, I found 2 great pictures of people that literally have billboards on their body, just as a humor to show that these people actually are walking billboards. But we really are. As far as it comes to other things that give away our communication skills or help us to break some of the barriers in dealing with others, your face paints 1,000 words. Think about it. Have you smiled today? Is a question that I always like to ask people. I was out in Michigan doing some training for a group of corporate, I guess they were salespeople. It was presentation training. And we would put them on camera and we'd have them do their spiel and we'd identify things such as body language and energy and whether they sounded like this was really the best thing since sliced bread or they were just going through the motions and how were they going to persuade people that their products and services were actually going to help them. And we had one gentleman that came up and no matter what we did, this man would not smile. It was really tough.
Painful.
And it was painful to watch. And we play the videotape back, and I would just ask him, is this good news? Is what you're selling, do you really think this is going to help people? And he was like, absolutely. I said, but you look miserable. You're so stone-faced. And throughout the day, as the day progressed, we uncovered that he was an ex-Marine and had been conditioned to believe that smiling was a sign of weakness. So as the day went on and I got him up more and tried to get him to tell jokes and get off the topic that he was being super serious about, we explained that not smiling is a sign of weakness. It opens barriers in every language. I work once a month down at Macy's and Herald Square. I do a corporate news video magazine for them, and it never fails. Every month I go into the ladies' restroom to just fix myself before I have to go in front of the camera, and there's people constantly walking in and out. And this is because this is a big building, and I will play a game every month. I will wait and see, and if I don't make eye contact or smile at somebody, nobody does it back to me. And if I don't say good morning, nobody does it back to me. And then when people walk in, I'll be the first to smile and say good morning. And it's as if you wake them up from sleep, and they're like, oh, hi, good morning. People are just dying for someone to break the ice. And most of the time, they're afraid or they're just thinking about something else or they're not conditioned to do that. And you would be amazed on the elevators or in restrooms or in public places or wherever it may be, walking down the hall of corporations, what a difference this makes when you're the one to initiate this. Even checking out at a supermarket. Sometimes if you don't engage the person, they just go through and it's like like dealing with robots. And then all of a sudden you say, hi, how are you today? And it's like, oh, they wake up and they want to help you. And once you build that instant rapport with a smile or a question, or you engage somebody, it changes the whole playing field. It's almost like they want to help you. They want to engage with you. They're like, oh, that person is nice, or that person is somebody that I want to interact with. But that has to come from us establishing that, because most of the time you're not going to get that from people.
It's true. And what I find is that not only does it make them feel better, but it makes me feel better. Even if I don't initially get the reaction I'm hoping for, it makes me realize that, what, I do have something to smile about. I should be the one who's putting that foot forward. And sometimes it doesn't work, but most of the time people are receptive. But it makes you feel good no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, at least you were the one that tried to initiate it. And if someone's in a bad mood, or they've got a pickle puss or whatever, then most of the time it's not about us anyway. And a lot of times we think that it is. And they're worried about so many other things going on in their own lives that it really isn't about us, and we have to learn to not take that personally.
That's very true.
Another thing that is super important is eye contact. I have a 9.5-year-old son, and we are constantly on him saying, make eye contact. Look people in the eye. When they speak with you, look at them. Make sure that you're making that eye contact. It is so important, and this is something that people just don't pay attention to. And I don't know about you, but I get a little leery of people if they don't look me in the eye. I'm wondering why. Either you're thinking, are they hiding something? Or sometimes, now doing what I do for a living, I immediately think, oh, maybe they're not feeling that confident, or they're not feeling that good about themselves. So I say, fake it till you make it. If you can just fake that smile, or try to put that smile on, or try to make that eye contact, I think that it's going to really make a difference in opening a lot of doors for people if that's not something that you currently do.
My mother used to always say, if somebody doesn't look you in the eye, they're hiding something.
Yeah. And it may just be the fact that they're hiding the fact that they're not comfortable, they're not secure, or they're not feeling that great about themselves. But I just think that people love to feel like you're really listening to them, you're really looking them in the eye. I think that people also feel like they just want to be listened to. And I think that the best communicators are really the best listeners. And so many times people will say, oh, they're a great communicator, they're a great public speaker, they're so good at this, they're so good at that. But I know that if I go to a public speaking event and someone is up there and it's all about them, and it's all about that they're trying to just be the best speaker in the world, if I don't personally leave with something that helps me better in my life somehow, or my business, I'm like, okay, yeah, they're just a great public speaker. That's fine. But they could mess up, they could stumble, they could lose their train of thought. And if I walk away that I got something out of it that I can use, I'm going to think they were the greatest speaker in the world, and I'm going to forget any of those faults.
That's so true. And Patricia, we have a call.
Oh, hi. Welcome to Inside and Out. Who's calling?
Hi, my name is Janine, and I currently work at a technology company. It's a male-dominated industry, working mostly with men. And I find there are times when I leave a meeting, and I believe we're on the same page about a topic, and then I find out that we're miles apart in our thoughts and actions. I want to know, how can I be sure my message is not only being heard by others, but that it's being understood?
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you first for calling, Janine. I think that it's really important to make sure that we're on the same page before we leave a room. Studies show that men and women communicate differently. It's just our brains work differently, and we look at things differently. And I find that men are very solution-oriented. They want to get right to the point. There's no emotion involved, especially when it comes to business. And they want the meat and potatoes, clear and concise, sum it up. Let's make sure that we all, again, get what the plan is here before we leave a meeting. So what I would suggest that you do is recap before the end and say, okay, this is how I understand. Make sure that you ask questions and say, is this what it is that this is what I think I'm getting that you're asking me to do, or that I think that this is the direction that we've planned to go in. Am I correct? Is this what we have in mind? I would flat out make bullet points as that meeting goes along, and then at the end say, okay, here are my must-dos once I leave this meeting. The first one is this. Is that correct? And this is what I'm going to do? Yes? Okay. Or no? Okay, then what? Then ask some backup questions and say, well, what am I missing here? Can you explain that better, or give me some of the points that I didn't quite grasp to come to this idea that I thought I'm obviously misunderstanding. And then I would go down every bullet point, and before I left that room, I would want to make sure that, we're clear. And I think that, again, it's all in the delivery. You don't have to be stern about it. You don't have to be accusatory if someone says, no, that's not what I meant. Just simply say, okay, this is what we talked about. Here's the plan. Am I correct, and does this make sense?
Okay, that's good advice. So basically have them validate what I believe I said and what they heard.
Exactly. So I would do it in bullet points. And again, less is more. I'd be very clear and concise. I'd just give them back the meat and potatoes, and I would make sure that they validated each one of those points. And if they didn't, ask them to give you the information again, and then you say it back to them and say, this is what you meant? This is what you meant, correct? This, when I work with people that are getting interviewed by reporters, sometimes for their business, I will say to them, make sure that you ask them, do you understand what this means? Can you read it back to me, what you just said? If they really want to make sure that they're quoted correctly, because we are also all coming from different experiences and different backgrounds where something could mean something very different to me than it does to you. So I would always jot down what are my must-dos at the end of this meeting, reiterate them back, and say, is this correct? And I just want to make sure that what you meant is what I meant.
Okay, very good advice. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the call.
Patricia, we have another call.
Hi, welcome to Inside and Out.
Welcome. Thank you very much. It's funny because when you talked about eye contact, my mom said the same thing. If they're not looking you in the eye, they have something to hide. You always make sure you have eye contact.
Right.
And another thing is, as far as children, I live in a male-dominated house, all sons, and a lot of times I would speak, and I would say, so what did I say? So that they'd repeat it back to me,
right.
So they know that they heard what I said.
Yeah.
So I'll say, I didn't hear what you said, so what did I say? And then I have to repeat it. And, I'm the type of person that I love people. If I don't have a moment to say hello to somebody, just a stranger passing by, especially with young children, I'll smile at them. And my husband says when I'm in an elevator, by the time we go from one floor to the other, I've made friends. Yeah,
which is so important. And, it really, people view you as being more confident, more outgoing, more accessible, more approachable. And so often, we're so worried about what people think about us, but what it really comes down to is how we make people feel about themselves. Mm-hmm. And when we're engaging and we pay attention and we want to smile and want to interact with people, it actually makes them feel good.
And one last thing, if you're having a bad day and if you want to get out there, like you said, you don't have to videotape yourself. Just look in the mirror, because what you see, that reflection is what others see.
That's right.
So if you don't see a smile and a sad person, that's what they're going to see, and I don't think they're going to be so receptive.
Right.
Anyway, you have a great day.
Thank you so much for the call.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
She just reminded me of something that I heard on some audio tape. I'm a big person of listening to motivational audio tapes and self-improvement. I think it's really important to kind of fill our brain with that, especially if I'm going in to coach people. I won't listen to the news. I won't listen. I think garbage in, garbage out, and I always try to listen to things that are going to get me motivated and give me other tips that I can pass on to people. But there was something that someone said in one of them where, if you're walking around and you're gossiping or you're complaining about how you're not feeling good, it's almost like you're dead, and people don't want to hang out with dead people. Really, think about that. It's like people want to hang out with people that are alive and light and bringing positive attitudes, because we're all dealing with something. We're all struggling with something.
So
and we all have to do that, and sometimes you just have to live in compartments and keep that in certain places and don't let it infiltrate into other areas where people just don't want to hear it. So let's talk a little bit about voice and delivery. Your voice is something that really resonates with people, again, whether it's over the phone or in person. And speed really is an indicator of nerves. This is one thing when I have to speak with people that have to deal with a confrontational phone call or do a public speaking event. And I will always say to them, when you're nervous, you have to know that your knee-jerk reaction is going to be to speed up the rate of your speech. So you have to say to yourself before that call or before that interview or before that presentation, I need to slow it down because I know I'm going to be speaking faster than I probably should. And this is probably a great time to not have a lot of caffeine because caffeine is going to make us speak fast too. There was a really interesting NASA study done down in Florida several years ago where they administered different kinds of drugs to spiders. And some of them were some pretty heavy drugs, but one of them was caffeine. And it ended up that caffeine was the worst culprit of them all as the way that it affected the spiders. They couldn't spin their intricate webs when they were loaded up on caffeine. So now they're seeing how this translates to human cognitive behavior and how we process information. So I always would recommend to people, don't take a lot of caffeine before you have to get on that call or go to that interview or get up on stage. And one of the things, especially with women, is that we tend to get into high C. We tend to, as we go along, every sentence gets a little higher and we end in an up note rather than in a low note. So for instance, if we were speaking, we'd say, lower your register at the beginning of each sentence or thought, avoid high C. Avoid high C. So we come down and we end on a deeper note and lower our register at the at the end of each sentence. That will always help us to sound more direct, more in control, more composed, more confident. So really start to notice your voice. And the other thing is that when we do go too fast, that's when something called verbal graffiti comes into play. The ers, the ahs, the you knows. You know drives me crazy. I just have to say that.
I know you know drives you crazy.
If I knew, I wouldn't need you to tell me. And my father always tells a story. We grew up in Pearl River, and this older woman would walk around town, and everybody knew her, and she ended every sentence and everything she said with, you know, twice, you know. And I was like, oh my gosh, it used to drive people insane. But it's become so ingrained in our society that you'll hear people say it all the time.
And they don't even know how many times they've said it. It's very true.
And it's my job to count them. Okay, great. I'm going to count your nose, Lynn, so I hope I don't hear anything. Okay, so we have about 4 minutes left, and as you can see, a gazillion things to talk about, and we have a lot more shows coming up where we can get deeper into the nitty-gritty of some of these things that we've just touched on. But we do have another caller on the line. Hi, good morning. Welcome to Inside and Out.
Hello. I'm originally from New York, but I'm actually listening to the show in the early mornings from Australia.
Oh, very great. What's your name?
My name's Tim.
Thanks for calling from Australia, Tim.
Oh, it's a great show. Thank you. I just had two things to say. I'm dealing a lot with Aboriginals, and it took me a long time to discover that they actually viewed direct eye contact with strangers as a form of aggression.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, that's a cultural thing. That's something you want to find out pretty quickly, I'm sure.
And I'm reading a book at the moment, You Say More Than You Think by Janine Driver. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. I'm trying to just find out what's the best way to get natural responses when I'm interviewing children. And I just wondered, how do I get a child to be more natural in their responses with the way I present my questions and my overall presence?
Well, I think that we learn best, especially since we were children, as when people are great storytellers. So I think that when you're speaking to a child the way that I would for my son, or when I go and I speak at different events, certainly when I am addressing an audience of corporate presenters as opposed to a fifth grade class, my demeanor, my whole communication style is going to be very different. So I will get down on their level. I'll sit down on the floor with them. I'll get eye level with them so that I'm not speaking at them, that they feel like I'm just chatting and being conversational with them, and then get them to start telling stories. I'll tell a story and then I'll say, can you tell me something like that happened to you? And if I'm having fun and I'm engaging and I'm acting like a kid again, then they tend to feel like they're just speaking amongst their peers and not to an adult, and I've found that that's been really effective.
Yeah, I'll try that, because I'm also 6'5", so I think my presence to a child is a little intimidating.
Yes, well, you're like Arnold Schwarzenegger in Kindergarten Cop, if that's the case, and he won them over, so you certainly can. And I think, and if you notice, that's a great movie if you haven't ever seen that before, because that's exactly what he does. He gets down to their level, he plays with them, he engages them, he asks them for ideas on how to play certain games that help them communicate to him and reveal certain things. I think one kid was even being abused, and he helped him by some of the ways that he got down and acted like a a kid. So if you haven't seen that movie, I think that you can get some good tips from that. But, my husband's 6'5", too, and when he gets mad at my 9-year-old, it's a big difference coming all the way from up there by the ceiling. So definitely getting down to their level. And it's a wonderful opportunity for you to be a kid again and to try and think and act like a kid. And for me, that's always been a way that they've responded for me.
Oh, well, thank you so much for your help.
Absolutely, and thanks so much again for calling from all the way from Australia.
Yes, as we say, g'day, mate.
G'day, mate. All right, well, thank you so much, everyone, for all of your phone calls and for tuning in. This has been Inside and Out with Patricia Stark and Lynn Cimetti, and we've got lots more to come in the future. We hope that you'll join us again. Have a great day.